rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
All right, how about that? Okay, that's just very, very weird. All right, well, that's why things weren't working. Okay, audio is there. Got it. Oh, okay. Huh. I don't know. Yeah, why is it doing it me this way? Yeah, I know. That's a good question. Don't understand. Yeah. So, obviously there's a bit of a problem. Now my audio is way too low. Ah, my goodness. Okay, give me just a second. Let me try one thing here and let's see if I can do this. I can't do that because if I do that, I'm going to kill it. Problems. Hello. Yeah, it was too low last night. Well, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, something's going now. Interesting. How how is it? Okay, so that one. All right, this is frustrating. Not a loose connection, guys. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but let's see if I can boost that up a little bit there. How is it now? Is that better? Yeah, something definitely isn't right. I don't know what to tell you. Is it better now? Got to make sure that... This is rough. Oh, wait. Now somebody... Is that better? 3 Chevy said that it was much better just a second ago. Becky's like, it's fine. Now it's more betterer. Everything. Okay, so are we good with the audio for right now? Are we good for the audio right now? Okay, so we've got some yeses. We've got some stuff there. We're okay for the audio at the moment. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to reboot the software. And if I do that, then we're going to be in a bit of a problem. It's going to be rough if I end up having to do that. Okay. All right. Go with it, they say. So, okay. Let me try one other thing here. Just for the kicks and giggles and stuff like that with it. And let's see if maybe this will help keep it, well, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's helping much on my side. Anyway. My goodness. Now I'm going to have to eat the mic in order for it to come through well enough. Okay. Well, that's all right. You guys don't need to see my mouth anyway. Okay. Well, I was going to do the, oh, see, now that's funny because you're saying that going close to the mic helps, but there I turned up the gain on the mic a little bit. So hopefully you'll probably get some background, stuff going on, but hopefully that'll help somewhat for everything. I don't know what's going on. This is ever since I changed over those audio cards, we seem to be having some challenges here, which is not good. And I was going to do a starting spot, but I guess not tonight. All right. You gotta love live broadcasting with everything that's going on here. Anyway. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, Elon Musk has been able to do what Joe Biden refused to do, which of course that means that he actually got the final splashdown of the SpaceX crew, the Dragon crew, they returned to Earth after nearly 10 months in space. So they're back. They splashed down off the coast of Florida, and future ones are supposed to be conducted off of the coast of Southern California. But you might want to realize that, this is this is something that honestly, has been a bit of a problem, and Elon made a comment about this. He said that Joe basically left them up there. He left them up in space. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is, but I can tell you this much. It definitely is one of those things where, anyway, so Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who were forced to remain on the International Space Station after their Boeing Starliner spacecraft experienced technical issues, returned safely with Crew 9 commander Nick Hague and Crew 9 pilot Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. So they departed the International Space Station just after 1 a.m. on March 18th. And the capsule turned itself around and fired its re-entry burns around 5:11 p.m., slowing itself to a point where it pulled out of orbit and began re-entering the atmosphere, aiming for a splashdown zone somewhere off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. By 5:37 p.m., all cargo was stowed, harnesses were strapped tight, and their spacesuit helmets were closed. And by 5:44 p.m., they had faded into the communication blackout. Now, if you recall, if any of you have seen Apollo 13, that communication blackout is like scary. It's kind of like when I go and reboot a networking device, because of course I'm in networking on my regular day job, and network device, and it doesn't come back within the allotted time. It tends to get a little, I tend to get a little nervous when it does that. So anyway, but there you go. And at 5:54 p.m., cheers erupted as the parachutes deployed, followed shortly by the main parachute, and then, of course, slowing the spacecraft for more than 370 miles per hour down to 16. And at 5:58 p.m., the capsule landed in the calm Gulf waters. Haig was quoted as saying, "What a ride. There is a capsule full of grins, ear to ear." So Dragon Freedom conducted the push through the atmosphere autonomously. So in other words, they didn't have any control. Now that would be a problem with me, because I like being in control. Anyway, yeah, so they returned with that crew of 4. Haig and Gorbanov themselves returned after serving a multi-month mission as part of the ISS's 72nd live board science expedition. Theirs was the final splashdown of a SpaceX Crew Dragon off the coast of Florida, as NASA officials announced that all future splashdowns occurring off the coast of Southern California, beginning with the return of Crew 10 this summer. So Crew Dragon is the 4th type of spacecraft Williams and Wilmore have flown in their careers, coming after the Space Shuttle, Russian Soyuz, and of course the Boeing Starliner. So there we go. So yeah. Anyway, Williams returns now with 106 days in space under her belt, according to NASA officials, making her the 2nd most days in space of any NASA astronaut, followed by Peggy Whitson, who still holds the record of 675 cumulative days in space. So there you go. And actually, U.S. Abbey Girl, I think it's in the Atlantic Ocean, not in the Gulf of America. But anyway, so Williams ranks 4th in the amount of spacewalking time recorded by a female astronaut, coming home with 9 career spacewalks now, totaling 62 hours and 6 minutes. She also served as the commander of the ISS after getting reassigned to the Expedition 72 mission with Wilmore after the Starliner capsule was deemed unsafe for re-entry. Their original mission was extended from a little bit more than a week to 286 days, beginning with the tail end of Expedition 71. So, oh, okay, my bad. Gulf of America. I always thought they went into the Atlantic, not in the Gulf, but okay. Oh, all right. So I was wrong. There you go. There's a first for the program for me to say that I was wrong. Just kidding. My wife and I have a argument, or not an argument, but a continuing discussion about that. But shh, don't say anything. Anyway, all right. So that's a triumph for SpaceX, for Trump, and for Musk. All three wrapped up in one. Okay. So Trump also has racked up another win, even though it's a partial win, but it's still a win. He held a call with Putin, and they agreed to a partial ceasefire for Ukraine and Russia. Ahead of the call, Trump had said that there were many elements of the ceasefire plan that were already agreed to by Russia, but apparently they couldn't get the whole thing taken care of. It was only going to be, there's a few things there, but the ceasefire, the actual ceasefire, was to, what was it they called it? They called it something about many elements. Let's see. Many elements were of a final agreement have been agreed to, but much still remains, Trump said on his Truth Social platform. He continued and said, thousands of young soldiers and others are being killed each week, brings 2,500 soldier deaths from both sides, and it must end now. I look very much forward to the call with President Putin. He had confirmed over the weekend that the leaders planned on discussing the ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. And he also said on Sunday that the talks were supposed to involve land and power plants, adding that they had already discussed dividing assets between the two companies. Now, by the way, or countries. And by the way, I don't think anybody really understood this, but Russia actually just recently pushed out the Ukrainians from the small little sliver of land that the Ukrainians had taken and were holding on to, or attempting to hold on to, kind of as a bargaining chip, I think, in the best way. Was that they were going to be, a bargaining chip for it. And ended up where they got pushed out. And so now that bargaining chip is no longer something that Ukraine can hold over Russia, or hold for Russia, or hold them. Anyway, the point being is that there's no longer that little bargaining chip that Zelensky can use against Russia to try and gain certain concessions. So now the question is going to be whether or not Russia is really going to agree to a full ceasefire. We don't really know that 100%. But anyway, there apparently is a power plant that's on the border of Russia and Ukraine that was up for discussion with the Ukrainians. And Ukraine obviously agreed to the 30-day ceasefire with Russia, following the March 11th talks between the Ukrainians and U.S. officials in Saudi Arabia. But Moscow on Monday, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko said that Moscow wants a guarantee that NATO will not accept Kiev's membership in the security alliance. Grushko told Russian media outlet Izvestia, we will demand that ironclad security guarantees become part of this agreement. Part of these guarantees should be the neutral status of Ukraine, the refusal of NATO countries to accept it in the alliance. So, and that, of course, came on the heels and was in response to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky previously insisting that any peace deal must include security guarantees to ensure Ukraine's ability to defend itself against any potential future Russian attacks. So obviously that's going to be a big sticking point between the two of them. The ceasefire basically has to deal with power plants too. and power and some of that stuff. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. Things are starting to progress a little bit. And with my technical snafu, of course, the folks on Rumble have reminded me that that I missed the pledge. So, that I missed the pledge. So, what I'm going to do is backtrack a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and do the pledge right now. So, Definitely Not Karen is on tap for doing the pledge. So, if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat. If you're wearing one like me, place your hand over your heart and follow along with Definitely Not Karen in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, brother. Why is that not going out now? Hold on. Kills me. This kills me. And let's restart that again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Definitely Not Karen for sending in that pledge. If you would like to hear your version of the pledge played here on the program, or at least if the technical engineer can get his act together, played here on the program, all you need to do is submit your pledge after you've recorded it, either in audio or video, and send it off via email to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. Wow, this is just going to be one of those nights, isn't it? You know what was weird is I actually, before I went live, I took a look at my camera. Now my camera, the new one, it's a pan tilt zoom camera, meaning that it automatically can turn left or right. It can follow me. It's got, some AI technology in it. Yeah. Anyway, that thing was turned all the way around the wrong direction. It was actually looking away from me. So I don't know what the hell happened, but yeah, it was definitely not in the right spot. And that should have been a clue to me that things were not as they should be. But whatever. Anyway, I digress. All right. So, some new things that are going on with just at least one article, also too, in terms of new stuff. That was the first two was new stuff. This is new stuff as well. The AP, apparently, at least according to the Daily Wire, let's make sure this stuff works. There it is. The AP retracts an article that claimed that Trump was very good friends with Putin. Now, this is kind of interesting. In terms of the fact that, Trump and Putin just kind of talked and worked out a little bit of their partial ceasefire agreement. But anyway, the AP is retracting an article that claimed that Trump was very good friends with Putin. And the Associated Press retracted an article yesterday after it falsely claimed that the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, called President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin very good friends. The Associated Press has withdrawn its story about the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, saying that President Donald Trump and Russian President Putin are very good friends. Gabbard was talking about Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The AP will publish a corrected version of the story. The AP posted in a correction after retracting the article. The article had apparently covered comments that Gabbard had made during a trip to India as the U.S. intelligence chief. It was initially headlined, according to one post online, that Gabbard says Trump and Putin are very good friends, focused on strengthening ties. Yeah. Anyway, Gabbard made the comments in an interview with India's NDTV. The AP's corrected article focused on comments Gabbard made about Trump's efforts to negotiate an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Under the previous administration during which this war began, there was no effort. There was no effort at all towards peace, she says. There was no effort to have a direct dialogue with Putin and with Russia to try and bring about an end to this war. So already in a very short period of time, President Trump has made much more progress towards peace than any effort that has occurred by anyone previously, Gabbard had said, according to the AP's updated article. I'm sure that President Trump will have a very productive conversation with Putin, once again rooted in his unwavering commitment to peace. There you go. Now, the Daily Wire points out that this error is likely going to deepen the gulf in the relationship, meaning, the separation in the relationship between the Trump administration and the AP. So in other words, yeah, they're not going to get back in the White House anytime soon. Anyway. The AP was not only barred from the press pool, but also barred from attending certain events. The White House blocked the outlet after it refused to update its style book to reference the Gulf of America, which, of course, was renamed by Trump's executive order. So anyway, yeah. Yeah, that's going to go over well, as far as that goes. So, all right. Whatever. Oh, okay. So let's take a look back at, let's take a look back at a couple of old news stories, and some updates about them. So I don't know if you've noticed, but, the press, all of the press, seems to think that Trump defying the courts, meaning the Tren de Aragua deportation and the follow-up order, or, well, there's some question as to how quickly those things are. But the order to return those gangbangers and gang members and criminals back to the U.S., they seem to have forgotten about Joe Biden's defying SCOTUS and bragging about it too, by the way. And the corporate media basically were like, whatever. So if you really want to see, the double standard by these guys, just all you have to do is just look at this. Former President Joe Biden openly admitted to defying the Supreme Court multiple times in posts on X, and one in particular. And this was in regards to the Supreme Court's 2023 ruling on student debt. He posted on X, he says, I promised to ease student debt for millions of folks. The Supreme Court blocked me, but it didn't stop me. Yeah. And then he also posted another one, doubling down his position a couple of months later by saying the Supreme Court tried to block me from relieving student debt, but they didn't stop me. I'm going to keep going. Yeah, so, I mean, all right, let's be honest. That probably wasn't Joe Biden. We now know that the auto pen was used throughout his entire administration. And we also know that his X account, he probably wouldn't even know what X was. He probably wouldn't even be aware of the fact of how to use X. So anyway, Axios also, remember too, that Axios was downplaying the Supreme Court's ruling as more of a mere, quote, setback, unquote, noting that Biden was able to provide relief by circumventing the need for congressional or court approval. Yeah. Again, I refer back to this wonderful thing called the Constitution, this thing. Well, this is a copy of it, but the Constitution, it's like, yeah, sure. Anyway, the Constitution specifically states, and Nancy Pelosi agreed with this, by the way, but the Constitution specifically states that the president doesn't have the keys to the purse. The power of the purse resides with Congress. Anyway, CNN also, Katie Labusco, or Labusco, however it's pronounced, reported how Biden, quote, found ways to continue canceling student loan debt despite the Supreme Court ruling. And then she continued in saying, although the Supreme Court struck down President Joe Biden's signature student loan forgiveness program in late June of 2023, his administration found ways to cancel more than $48 billion in debt since then. Oh, how much of a double standard do you have? Because immediately they've been talking nothing about, they've been talking about the fact that Donald Trump, quote unquote, defied, even though he didn't really, or at least that's going to be up toward interpretation by the Supreme Court once it gets there, supposedly defied a court order. So, again, this is just bringing up the point. Do these district court judges, these federal district court judges that are lower court judges, do they have the constitutional authority to block the executive branch of the federal government? The only court, in my mind, the only court for that is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's the only court that has constitutional power to block it because, again, the lower courts aren't even mentioned in the Constitution itself, other than the fact that Congress shall create and remove courts as needed, the lower courts as needed. That's the thing. I don't know where, the left, and I honestly don't understand where the mainstream media seems to get off on the idea that this is not that big. This is not something that a federal district court judge can do. So, yeah. Anyway. Oh, I got to get at least one read in here. So, let's go ahead and do this one. All right. This sponsorship is from Rumble, one that is incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. Me. Like me. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought the platform would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. And Facebook admitted that they fell to the pressure from the Biden-Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting back to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get that much of those. So, watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe this fight, and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human rights to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO, that's STUDIO, when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com / that's the question mark key, / premium, and use promo code STUDIO, STUDIO, to get $10 off when you purchase an annual subscription. Once again, go to rumble.com / premium, use promo code STUDIO to get $10 off when you purchase an annual subscription. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy if you watch us on Rumble. Now, one thing that I do want to point out from these reads, you'll notice that I'm doing these reads and things. That's because Rumble has a program going on right now where if you use Rumble Studio, you can get these advertisers that are coming in, like Rumble Premium, like 1775 Coffee, like Positive, that are for the smaller people, the ones that are reading these things, and they're using them advertisements to help encourage content creators like myself, and of course help to pay us back. Now, as a part of that program, once you get into the program, okay, there is a requirement that you have to have 5 hours of your 30 hours minimum streaming per month to be part of what's called Rumble Premium. Now, Rumble Premium is essentially, it's the paid service, okay? You go ad-free. You no longer have to have ads in front of them, but you'll also gain access to special content. So, I am close to getting into that program. All right. Once I do, that means I'm going to have to stream a minimum of 5 hours in the Rumble Premium side. Right now, I'm debating on what kinds of things I want to do for those people who are paying for Rumble in particular. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to join or anything else. There is going to be some content, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing with these. So it's a requirement, and I'm kind of like dragging my feet a little bit to get in there, because I really don't want to make you guys have to pay for something. So I'm just going to tell you right now, if you can't pay, if you don't want to pay, no big deal. Okay, you're not going to really miss much. But I am going to be putting together some content that'll be specific for Rumble Premium folks. And so you'll probably be seeing some of that change coming up in the near future once I get approved to be a part of that program. Okay. So anyway, so that's why you see some of these ads. That's why you see some of these things that are going on. I'm trying to, obviously make a go of this kind of thing. So anyway, all right, back to the program. Enough about that. That's of course provided that I can get all of my audio issues and stuff figured out. All right. So circling back around, I hate using the word circle back because he had circle back Pasaki, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. Yeah. So, Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Well, I mean, you guys remember that, right? I mean, I call it the Inflation Inducing Act because that's literally what it did. But anyway, apparently there was a study done, and the original estimate for the Inflation Reduction Act was that it was only going to cost about $370 billion. I'm trying to understand how something that was supposed to reduce inflation was going to cost us money, but whatever. Anyway, that was the original estimate. But according to a new study by the Cato Institute, it actually finds that the structure of subsidies that were included in the Inflation Inducing Act means that taxpayers are going to be on the hook for nearly $5 trillion over the course of the next 25 years. That doesn't sound right. So when former President Joe Biden's signature hit, well, his auto pen signature hit the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022, it did so along party lines with not a single Republican vote for it. And in fact, at the time, there was a Senate one pager summarized the law as costing taxpayers $369 billion based on the CBO, the Congressional Budget Review, or Congressional Budget Office's estimates. However, a new study from the Cato Institute finds that the law could cost as much as 4.67 trillion by 2050. That's roughly 12 times stated cost. Okay. Yeah. So Joshua Loix, who is a research associate with the Cato Institute and co-author of the analysis, said in a video explaining the study that, quote, the government should not have a hold on the economy in such a way that it can truly distort entire markets. And that's what the Inflation Reduction Inducing Act is. So, yeah, there we go. Yep. Loix and his co-author, Travis Fisher, Director of Energy and Environmental Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, explained that the impetus for doing the study was the wildly varying estimates of the cost of the IRA that came out since its passage. While the CBO pegged the figure at $369 billion, Goldman Sachs estimated in May of 2023 that would be closer to $1.2 trillion. Okay. There were other estimates as well. All of them are coming up to different conclusions. And so, Loix said, we decided to go on our own fact-finding endeavor here. And that's what resulted in this paper. So apparently, folks, as taxpayers, we are paying two forms of subsidies. One is production tax credits, which provide tax credits per unit of energy produced, or the other one being investment tax credits, which provide tax credits for various investments in, remember, carbon-free energy. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the Inflation Inducing Act, was basically the Green New Deal repackaged, as you recall. And, yeah, so, oh my gosh. We're going to end up paying for this. We're just going to end up paying for this. There are a lot of Democrats, especially on the social medias, that keep complaining about the fact that Republicans screw up the economy and Democrats have to go and fix it. That's wrong. That is entirely false. The Republicans don't screw up the economy. The Republicans fix the economy and take it out of the government's hands, which is exactly what Donald Trump is attempting to do. He's trying to make it into the free market economy that it's supposed to be. Yeah. Anyway, what a mess. What a total mess. All right. Well, let's move on to the next old but new news. Remember little old DA Fannie Willis? Fannie Willis, that's right, the one that roped in her sometimes lover for going after the Trump administration in Georgia. Yeah, well, guess what? She just found out, rightfully so, thankfully, but she just found out that she is not above the law. So there was a ruling issued on Friday by Fulton County Superior Court Judge Rachel Krause. She found that Willis's office intentionally withheld public documents related to the prosecution of President Donald Trump. He wasn't president back then, but she's being paid she's being ordered to pay over $54,000 in attorney's fees and turn over the withheld documents because her office apparently violated what's called the Georgia's Records Act. So this all stems from one of the attorneys, Ashley Merchant, who filed an open records request seeking information regarding Willis's professional conduct, including her relationship with Nathan Wade, who she appointed to the Trump case. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Merchant filed the request in September of 2023, but ultimately said that she was completely stonewalled by Willis's office. Now, the request sought multiple sets of records, including any NDA agreements required of DA office employees, a list of attorneys hired by Willis since taking office, and financial records relating to a contract with a New York-based media monitoring service. Now, Judge Krause determined that Willis's office failed to comply with the open records law and stated in her ruling that the DA's office's actions were intentional, not done in good faith, and were substantially groundless and vexatious. I think that's how you pronounce that word. Anyway, the DA's office is now required to cover the attorney fees and litigation expenses for Merchant, her husband, John, and the couple's paralegal, who all worked on obtaining the records. The court order also, by the way, highlighted the testimony of Dexter Bond, who is the open records custodian for the DA's office, who was found to have treated Merchant's request differently than other requests. This is not a good thing. So, yeah. He apparently refused to communicate with Merchant by phone, and according to Fox News, who reported that Bond was openly hostile toward Merchant and admitted that his usual practice of contacting requesters for clarification was not followed up on this case. Now, the court order did state that while there's no requirement for the Open Records Act, under the Open Records Act, for Mr. Bond to call any requester about a particular request, Mr. Bond's handling of Ms. Merchant's requests in this manner indicates a lack of good faith. Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen. And by the way, this ruling also raises further questions about Willis's office, on how Willis's office handled public records requests related to the rest of the case against Trump. Because keep in mind, this is just Merchant and her requests. Do it once. There's some questionability as to whether or not you've done it any other time. Yeah. We're going to have to watch this and see where this goes. So now that this court order is in place, Willis's office must comply with Georgia's Open Records Act and release the requested documents that she's been, Also, too, this ruling may fuel further scrutiny of her conduct as district attorney as the legal battles over the Trump case continue. Yeah. Oh, well, apparently dealing with COVID, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear about this, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to bring it up anyway, because, the UK has finally admitted, along with the New York Times, by the way, too. They have finally admitted that they all knew that COVID was not from where everybody thinks it was from, that it was actually more of a lab leak. So here in hot air, and here you can see the New York Times has talked about different things here, but they basically came up with the idea to try and push it off onto the whole wet market thing. And yeah, they all knew that was wrong. They all knew that was wrong. And the UK actually there was a leak, from German intelligence, which told Angela Merkel in early 2020 that the virus came from the lab. And now some of that same information is showing up from the UK. So all of those people like myself who got censored on YouTube and even, I mean, the biggest one, obviously the most talked about one was Dan Bongino leaving YouTube because they censored him for saying that the paper cloth diaper masks, that's what he calls them, cloth diaper masks, didn't work to block an airborne virus. All of those people, I wonder if there's a possibility of getting a class action lawsuit together to go after these people for any money that they might have missed out on for being demonetized, deplatformed, all of that stuff. Because we're now finding out that everybody pretty much knew. I mean, anyone with a modicum of common sense and logic could actually see that this thing, even when the information came out about the DNA strand having the CGG combination that doesn't naturally appear in nature, okay, that they have, while they are natural elements, that combination doesn't show up in nature. I covered it on my program long time ago. But that combination not showing up in nature was very rough, let's say. And yeah, that's so we're just now finding out about this. That it's beyond a reasonable doubt that COVID-19 was actually engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yeah. According to some sources, Boris Johnson was told in no uncertain terms by MI6 that the virus was engineered in China. And he likely also knew, by the way, that the U.S. had funded the program, which is the other piece that, anyway, and that the funding had worked itself through, okay, the UK Associated EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak. Yeah. So, all of this stuff is coming out. Yeah. So, again, folks, we're dealing with people who wanted to cover up the truth. They wanted to make sure that they covered up the truth. And, yeah, the key cover up, of course, was the Fauci commissioned Proximal Origins paper that was totally pure propaganda and was secretly edited by Fauci himself. Now you see why Fauci needed that pardon. Now you see why there is such a push, or should be such a push, to question whether or not the auto pen should have been used for presidential pardons. Okay? That's why. Okay? Because the authors, according to this piece in Hot Air, its authors were bribed and likely threatened to come up with a stinking pile of excrement. And anybody with a lick of sense knew that it was propaganda. In fact, it was quickly debunked, but nobody cared because the full might of the federal government and the Pravda media were engaged to force that narrative down our throats. Not just the Pravda media, but also all of the tech companies like Facebook, who has admitted to the fact that the federal government was prompting them to cut things out. Okay. Anyway, Palms says, I'm confused. Did it come from a lab in China or not? No, it came from the lab in China. And it was funded by the NIH. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm telling you that right now. All right. That's what I'm telling you right now. So that's what I believe. I believed it way back in the beginning. I even had conversations with people and I said, look, the lab did it. I mean, anybody with a lick of sense knew the epicenter for the release of the virus was not this wet market like what they wanted you to believe. Okay. Again, I all of this stuff is coming true. And now we're starting to see even more and more information that these people tried to cover this up, which kind of makes you wonder, what would be the purpose to cover this up? Unless they were in the pocket of the Chinese. Where did the money come from that they may have been paid for all of this? This article actually brings out more questions than it does answers. Seriously. I'm hoping that there's going to be further investigations into this entire thing, because this just doesn't, none of this is making sense. Even now, I mean, totally, the release of the virus, all of that. I mean, I actually think it might have been an accidental release. As far as that goes, but yeah, I don't think it was 100% intentional. However, I have my own theories as to the purpose behind it. But yeah, I'm just trying to understand and fully grasp the whole concept that, first of all, the government lied to us about it. They enabled or enacted the Pravda media. They also enacted the tech companies. And you sit there and wonder, Democrats, why the American people who have now figured all of this stuff out, okay, why the American people wanted to get Trump into office for all of the changes that he is doing and wanting to do and continuing to do. And they wonder why people had such a low opinion of the government and the governmental organizations. Anyway, like I said, that one, I mean, it was obvious. It was obvious. Well, here's another story where the constitutional question comes into play as to whether or not the judges can actually block executive orders. Here in the Epoch Times, judge blocks Doge's dismantling of USAID. Really? A federal judge said on March 18th that Elon Musk and his Department of Governmental Efficiency team likely violated the U.S. Constitution by moving to dismantle the USAID. Okay, dumb question, but how does the federal government, better yet, how does this federal judge say that the U.S. Constitution was likely violated when aid to foreign countries being funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars is literally not in the Constitution? I'd like to understand where these judges are getting this idea that spending tax dollars to go to these special programs and everything else, when it doesn't show up in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and therefore falls to the 10th Amendment as not a business of the federal government. I'd really like to understand some of these federal judges that are saying all of this stuff. U.S. District Court Judge Theodore Chang, Chuang, said in an opinion that closing the USAID headquarters, laying off the overwhelming majority of the USAID workforce, and terminating most of the agency's contracts violated the separation of powers established by the Constitution. Now, I want to remind you folks, okay? I want to remind you folks of this, and I am going to go a little long because of the earlier technical difficulties. But I want you to understand this, okay? USAID was enacted by John F. Kennedy in response to the Foreign Assistance Act, which did not specify anything other than an agency needs to be put in place to manage this money that was going to foreign aid to push the agenda. Now, somebody could argue that that Foreign Assistance Act, okay, was unconstitutional, like I've already pointed out, in the first place. However, taking that one step further, let's assume that the Foreign Assistance Act is constitutional. All right? That doesn't mean that USAID is the only government agency that can fund this. In fact, as a part of the original act, it basically states that it's whatever this agency gets created, because again, they didn't know what the agency was, but that agency is under the auspices and control of the State Department. So if the State Department dismantles it, how is that unconstitutional? I'd like these federal judges to understand or to explain how all of this stuff is either constitutional or unconstitutional. And again, we go back to the whole point of how is this a federal district court judge is able to override the executive branch? Again, and make this a blanket order, by the way, this is part of the problem. Injunctions are one thing, but these blanket injunctions are something that is totally off the books and unconstitutional, clearly. So the Supreme Court's going to have to weigh in on this. There are too many things of this nature that have been happening more and more and more that need to be addressed by the Supreme Court of the United States. Okay? Seriously. All right, I'm going to hold off on those other two. I'll do that. I'll work on that tomorrow for Whiskey Wednesday. That'll be it for me for tonight. Do me a favor. If you, please, would head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. Unless, of course, you purchase Rumble Premium, which is awesome. But head on over to rumble.com, sign up and sign in. And once you do, make sure that you search up American Perspective, the American Perspective channel, and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. And before you guys take off, I would really appreciate it if you would hit those thumbs up buttons across all of my platforms, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, or the aforementioned Rumble. Okay? We will see you tomorrow night for Whiskey Wednesday, starting right here, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on, of course, all of my platforms. And, yeah, hopefully I'll have everything figured out by then in terms of the audio. We'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.